One of the questions I get the most in college when parents or players contact me is, which school should I contact? And I often say I don't know. Um, and it's tricky. Now, obviously, if you're a good player, you should aim at Division One, and you should look at rankings to sort of get a feel for where players of your caliber have attended, where they play, and so on and so forth. But it's a tricky path. It's hard for me to give hard answers. If you come to me and say, I have a 73 scoring average, which school should I apply to? It's a hard thing for me to give you a defined answer. This is part art, part science. But let's see if we can't figure out a few things that might be good for me to narrow down my search here. So let's say my scoring average is 73, 74. I'm in and out of my national team in my home country, and I don't know much about college golf. If I'm in and out of my national team, I think I want mainly D1. Maybe some D2 schools, I can search for that later. Okay, I am a male player, and let's say I want to filter this by the 3-year average ranking. So these are the school rankings over the last 3 years for the men's golf programs. Okay, so now I have which schools have historically the last 3 years been the best. At least it's a very good gauge. Now I don't know exactly where to start here, but I need to filter this down a little bit more. So maybe I can look at some of these. Let's look at LSU, for example. Okay, let me click in on this file here. Here I got the coach's information. I got the rankings, and here I can see where their current players are from, what WAGR they had at enrollment. Okay, I know that my WAGR is, let's say, 2,000. So it seems like they don't recruit that many 2,000s. They have a couple very highly ranked recruits when they enroll. I do see that they're quite international, but maybe that's a bit too high level. So let me look at this WAGR column here. Okay, here I'm kind of entering my 2,000 range. So these schools have historically been ranked around 30. Maybe this is a good start for me to start around this area to find schools. Okay, now that I know that, let's say that I am from Spain. Okay, so I want to find schools where Spanish players have attended. So here I get Lindenwood has had 9 players in the data that I have in the background here, UTRGV 6, and so on and so forth. So now if I go and look at Spanish players and sort of this 3-year rank, okay, ASU is historically ranked very high. They've had 4 Spanish players in the data that I have on the back end here. University of Utah, this might be my sweet spot. 3 Spanish players, average rank 32, average WAGR enrollment 1963. Let's add Utah to our pipeline. What else do we have here? 88th ranked, that could be Kennesaw State. It's had some Spanish players. Yeah, definitely interesting. Could be a good fit, 2,500 average WAGR ranking. Okay, and let's add one more. Let's add UCLA here, 27th ranked, Spanish players. Boom. Now I could go all the way up to 100 or so. Try not to limit your scope too much, and try not to be too ranking dependent. But just try to gather some information and go a bit broad, but use some of these things to gauge which schools to add to your pipeline. Now, how do I find more information then when I'm going to write my emails? Well, you can use some of these things. UCLA, I see you have 269 sunny days a year, and in February it's 52 Fahrenheit. That's pretty attractive for me. So I can write that in the email that I see your weather data is great. But I can also obviously use Google to search more about this program. But here I have linked for you straight to the team roster. Okay, so now I can kind of validate the data I have background, but I can also click through a bit here. Okay, so I can read about what tournaments they're playing by going into the schedule. I can read more golf facilities. So these are research objects that I will take into my recruiting email. That if we now go back to my pipeline, these recruiting emails I can draft in here. So here's UCLA. Here's Coach Armin. And I can say, I'm going to be a bit quick here, but I can say, I would love to explore attending UCLA. I see the weather is incredible. I've also researched your tournament schedule and your facilities. I see that you have had Spanish players. I would love to hear about how their transition was and how they developed during their time. And then excuse my middle paragraphs here because this is from my Get Started page that automatically populates in. And then I would write a closing paragraph to Coach Armin. Would love to catch up after your Big Ten championship. Let's save the draft. Let's open it in Gmail. And let's click send. Of course, this particular golfer would not have Norwegian golfer, but Spanish golfer from their Get Started page, and so on and so forth. But that's how you can find information, start gathering some information, and obviously go a bit deeper than I did in this brief example here. But that's how I would start with finding out which schools to contact. Hope that helps.